It had been almost 6 months since I had last seen Jason. He had just moved back to town after finishing graduate school, and his mother, my sister Ellen, had been on me for weeks about visiting him. "He misses you, Mary," she kept saying over the phone. "He's grown up now. You'll be surprised." So that Saturday, I decided to take her advice. I baked my usual lemon loaf, the one Jason used to love when he was little, and drove across town to his new apartment. The air was cool, crisp with the first signs of autumn. Leaves were turning that perfect golden shade that makes you nostalgic for things you can't quite name. It was one of those afternoons that feels like a memory, even as you're living it. Jason's apartment was small but warm, full of quiet details that spoke of him. Books lined the walls in neat, uneven stacks. A faint smell of cedar and coffee lingered in the air. When he opened the door, he greeted me with that familiar crooked grin. But this time it was layered with something new: confidence, or maybe distance. "Aunt Mary," he said, pulling me into a hug that lingered just a second longer than I expected. "You look great." I laughed softly. "You always say that when you want something." "Maybe I just mean it," he replied, smiling. And for the first time, I saw how much he looked like his father. The same gray-green eyes, the same careful stillness, as though he were always holding back a thought. We sat together in his small living room, and I poured coffee from the bakery thermos I'd brought. We talked about ordinary things: his job at the university, my garden, Ellen's endless projects. It felt easy, comfortable, until it didn't. Somewhere in the pauses between words, I noticed him watching me, not in a strange or unsettling way, but with a quiet curiosity that made me aware of myself in a way I hadn't been for years. "You ever think about how time sneaks up on you?" he asked suddenly. One day, you're a kid running through someone's backyard, and then suddenly you're the one pouring the coffee. I smiled faintly. That's how it goes. One blink, and you're on the other side of it. He nodded slowly, then hesitated. "Do you ever regret not having kids of your own?" The question landed deeper than I expected. It wasn't cruel, just honest, and coming from him, it felt raw. For a moment, I couldn't speak. "I used to," I said finally. "Sometimes I still do. But life had other plans. Besides, I've had plenty of people to care for." "Your mother, you—" He looked at me then with eyes softer than before, almost apologetic. He reached out and touched my hand, his thumb brushing the back of it lightly before pulling away. "Sorry," he murmured. "I didn't mean to make it heavy. I've always admired how you understand people. Like you see through them." I laughed gently. "That's just what happens when you've been around long enough. People stop surprising you." But as I said it, I realized it wasn't true. Because sitting there across from him in the soft autumn light, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: a quiet human awareness. Not romantic, not inappropriate, just connection. The kind that makes you feel alive and seen, stripped of rules and pretense. The kettle hissed faintly from the kitchen. I stood to refill our cups, and my hands trembled just enough for me to notice. When I turned back, Jason was still watching me, thoughtful, unreadable. We talked for hours. When the rain started soft at first, then steady, it filled the silence between us with its gentle rhythm. Jason moved to the couch and gestured for me to sit beside him. I hesitated only a second before joining him. His knee brushed mine, and I became aware of how little space there was between us. "You know," he said after a pause, "I used to think adults had everything figured out." I smiled, staring at the rim of my cup. "That's the great secret of adulthood. We don't, we just get better at pretending." He chuckled. "Then you must be really good at pretending." "Maybe too good," I admitted. "Sometimes I think I've spent half my life pretending I wasn't lonely." The words slipped out before I could stop them. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because the rain made everything softer, easier to confess. Jason didn't look away. Is that why you stopped dating? He asked quietly. I let out a small, uneven laugh. After a while, it just didn't feel worth it. I got comfortable with my own company. He leaned back, studying me. You deserve more than comfortable. The sentence hung there between us, tender, unassuming, but impossibly heavy. I felt something shift inside me. Not discomfort, not longing, just the ache of being seen too clearly. We moved the conversation back to lighter things, his students, his research, old memories, but that moment lingered like a note you can still hear after the music stops when evening came. The rain slowed, the world outside washed in silver light. Jason stood and stretched, then smiled. Do you want to stay for dinner? I was just going to make something simple. I should have said no, but I didn't want the day to end. Sure, I said softly. What are we having? Whatever you can teach me to cook. He grinned. We ended up in the kitchen, chopping vegetables side by side, laughing as he fumbled with the onions. The smell of garlic filled the apartment, blending with the scent of rain and cedar. Every so often, our arms brushed. Each touch was small, ordinary, yet it carried an electricity that neither of us spoke about. When we sat down to eat, the quiet felt different, comfortable, full. Thank you for coming today, he said quietly. I didn't realize how much I needed it. Me neither, I said, and I meant it. When I left that night, he walked me to my car. The pavement gleamed with light from the street lamps. He hugged me goodbye, warm and steady. It wasn't awkward, just real. When he finally let go, he looked at me and smiled softly. Can I ask you something else next time? Depends on the question. He laughed, and I carried that sound with me all the way home that week. I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation, about the way he looked at me, the way his voice softened when he spoke of life and regret. I told myself it was just affection, the bond between two people who cared deeply for each other. But it stayed with me longer than it should have. By Saturday, I was baking again. The lemon loaf, the coffee, everything the same, though I told myself it was just habit. Deep down, I knew I was looking forward to seeing him again. When he opened the door, his face lit up. Mary, he said warmly. His hug lingered again, familiar yet new. He had already made coffee. We sat in the same spots as before, the late morning light spilling through the curtains. For a while, we talked about nothing, books, the weather, the price of groceries, until he set his cup down and looked at me seriously. I've been thinking, he said, about what I asked last time. About regret. I met his eyes carefully. Yes. It made me wonder about you, he said slowly. About the things you wanted but never had. Not in a sad way, just curious. I looked down at my hands, feeling the warmth of the cup seep into my skin. I've wanted a lot of things, I said softly. Some I've had, some I haven't. But life isn't just about what we missed. It's about who we loved and how deeply we've lived. He nodded, gaze steady. Exactly. And that's why I wanted to talk. Because I feel like we can be honest with each other in ways that maybe we can't with anyone else. There was a quiet moment between us filled with something I didn't have words for. Not romance. Not confusion. Just two souls recognizing one another in their truest forms. We talked for hours that day. About our fears, our dreams, the quiet parts of ourselves that rarely see the light. Every word seemed to erase a little more of the distance between us. When dusk came, the room glowed amber. The world outside was still. He reached out and touched my hand again, lightly, reverently. I didn't expect this, he said. Not from anyone, but especially not from you. Neither did I admitted. But I'm glad it happened. The silence that followed was gentle, respectful. We weren't crossing lines. We were discovering something truer. Something that felt like grace. When I left that evening, the air was cool and clean. The street glistened from an earlier drizzle. I walked slowly, feeling lighter somehow. I realized the day hadn't been about guilt or longing, it was about understanding, about connection that defied easy definition. Over the next few days, I replayed our conversations in my mind, the soft tone of his voice, the way he listened without judgment, the warmth in his eyes when he smiled. I kept asking myself what it meant, and every time I came to the same quiet truth, it meant I was alive again. When I saw him the following weekend, we didn't need many words. We sat close, side by side, just sharing the same space. The heater hummed softly, filling the silence. "I've been thinking about us," he said finally. Not romantically, just as people. "I feel like we found something real, something rare." I nodded. "We have. It's like we can talk about anything," he continued. "No masks, no pretending." "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "That's exactly it." Later, we made dinner together again. Our movements were in rhythm now, easy and unhurried. When our hands brushed, it no longer startled me, it comforted me. When we sat down to eat, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm glad you came," he said softly. "Every time we talk, I feel like I learned something new, not just about you, but about myself." I looked at him, feeling something inside me settle. "Me too," I whispered. As the evening faded, I realized it wasn't about him or me. It was about the space between us. The honesty, the trust, the shared silence. The reminder that connection doesn't have to fit a label to be meaningful. When I stepped outside that night, the air was sharp and clear. I walked to my car slowly, breathing it in. The world felt softer somehow. I knew that whatever this was, whatever we had found, it had changed me. Drove home with the image of Jason's face still in my mind, the warmth of his voice echoing faintly like music carried on the wind. Life, I realized, didn't always unfold the way you planned. Sometimes it surprises you in quiet, extraordinary ways. And in those surprises, in those moments when someone truly sees you, you rediscover the part of yourself that still believes in connection, in kindness, and the endless capacity of the human heart to feel, to grow, and to be known. For the first time in years, as I turned into my driveway, I didn't feel lonely. I felt at peace, completely, deeply, quietly at peace.